Hi, welcome to Conversation Corner. I'm Town Administrator Jack Hathaway, and I'm joined, as usual, by Chairman of the Board, Jim Lehan. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Jack. Good to be here. Pardon my voice today. I'm a little on the hoarse side, but we'll get through it.
Sorry to hear that. We are here in the balmy December time period and getting ready for Christmas. But
This is a deja vu, isn't it? I think we were about here end of January of last year boasting about how little snow we'd had, and well,
yeah,
just as they say, it's history.
I won't do any boasting this year.
No, please.
So we wanted to spend today talking a little bit about the public safety project. We just finished up town meeting on December 1st, and Article 7 of that meeting was to ask the town for some funds to do the construction of the public safety, the police building down on Sharon Ave, and then to renovate the current public safety building on Main Street so that it will house the future fire station. Town meeting nearly unanimously, not quite, but almost unanimously approved that, and it's contingent on a debt exclusion that the Selectmen have scheduled for January 19th. So that we look forward to that, and we look forward to as many people as possible can come out and share their vote with us.
Yeah, it might be helpful just to share with people, excuse me, the process. I know there was some confusion at town meeting regarding when we would hold the election. And I think there were some posts that suggested that we were sort of creative on how we might want to think about doing that. The bottom line is actually the law is very specific on how you can do it. The law requires that it cannot be sooner than 35 days from the date of the town meeting. The date that we call it.
Correct.
It has to be at least 35 days from the date that we call the meeting, but we must call that meeting 90 days from the date of the town vote.
Correct.
So March 1st, unfortunately due to leap year, falls one day outside the 90-day cycle. We weren't opposed to holding it on March 1st. It didn't really matter. We talked with the town clerk, and she's the one that manages and controls all elections, and we don't have that option. So we've called it for January 19th. We picked January, quite honestly, because we thought, frankly, we had a better chance for better weather.
Yeah.
Historically, the bad weather has been in February and March, so we're hopeful. I mean, it's New England, who knows? And we did commit that we were going to hold this TV show to go over the financials. Hopefully, we'll get lots of folks to watch it. And then we're going to have an open hearing or an open forum in the library, January 7th.
January 7th.
January 7th, where we'll go through all this again, and we welcome, and we hope that everyone will attend. And if anyone has any questions, you can call any of the selectmen or Jack, and we'll be glad to answer all the questions that you might have. And just as a way of background, this is the third time we've looked at this. We looked at it originally in 2009. And we had a proposal. We looked at it again in 2012 and had a proposal. And here we are again. But today we just want to focus on the financials. So why don't you kick it off, Jack?
All right, great. So, Chris, we have slide number 1, if you don't mind, just to give people a little bit of background. So on May 13th, the annual town meeting approved that the Selectmen could borrow $1.8 million for the acquisition of 14 Sharon Ave. In addition to that, we would have some funds for architectural and engineering costs and to do some site work at the property. I'm paraphrasing that warrant article, but that's that. And continuing on December 1st, we had Article 7, December 1st of this year. We had Article 7, which approved the borrowing of $12.2 million to complete the construction of that police station on 14 Sharon Ave and to renovate the fire station, which is at 100 Main Street. But that is contingent, on a successful debt exclusion on January 19th. We've done, just to give you kind of the status of where we are today, outside of the town meeting votes, we've spent a little over $1.1 million. 1.1 of that was the acquisition of the building at 14 Sharon Ave. You can go down there and you can see the building. I had pictures of it up at town meeting. It's just a big metal, rectangular, industrial-looking building. We think it's not going to be the prettiest public safety building in the police station in the world, but it's going to be a very functional and per square foot cost. We think it's going to be one of the most affordable police stations that's being built these days. So we have $657,000 remaining in that original authorization of $1.8 million, and that will continue to be used for architectural and engineering costs, as well as to do site work so that we can prepare the site both for the police station and for the regional dispatch center, which will be a tenant of ours at the site, again at 14 Sharon Ave. So the $14 million comes from the original vote of $1.8 million, and then that secondary vote of $12.2 million. So Jim, you mentioned the kind of the differences in the projects from, or the not the differences, but the projects that we've gone through since 2009. And that original building was, what we were planning on doing was tearing down the complete public safety building and then building a new building there. And I think the folks that can see the kind of the differences in the two projects there.
You can see on the slide it was 27,200 square feet, but one of the key components of that was that we were going to have to relocate the police and the fire. And we estimated expenses to be about $1 million. Quite frankly, I think that probably was going to be low. We were talking about moving the fire department because we had to house the equipment down into the DPW. Certainly would have caused disruption for DPW. We're going to move the police, I think it was in Town Hall.
Correct.
And then it was about a year to 16, 18 months before we were going to be able to move them back in. So it was an interesting project at best, but it was our only option at that time because Regional Dispatch Center wasn't on the horizon. And we would have had to build into the site all of that equipment. And that now we will no longer have to do because since 2009, a lot due to the good work that you and your counterparts have done, we now have this Regional Dispatch Center which involves Norfolk, Rentham, Plainville, and Franklin. And it's a good first step. We're excited about it, but it allowed us now to look at it in an alternative way where we're able to separate the buildings and, quite honestly, in today's dollars, actually spend less and give us more flexibility. So sometimes you end up in the right place for the crazy reasons, but we're in a better place. This is a better proposal and a better project that wouldn't have been feasible in 2009 because of the Regional Dispatch Center.
Yeah, the Regional Dispatch Center, as you said, will have the 4 communities, and as I said earlier, they'll be a tenant of the town of Norfolk. We expect that they'll be paying somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 in revenue to the town. So the dispatch center will be set up like King Philip is. It's already through legislation become its own entity. It's not functioning at this point. We're waiting for the facility to be built, but it is its own entity. The 4 towns will be assessed a fee on an annual basis based on the population of the town, and then eventually we'll roll in call volumes. So the towns that have higher call volumes will pay more to the dispatch center, which is good because we expect that will impact Franklin and Plainville and Rentham, frankly, all 3 of them, with their commercial districts, which have a lot of calls. We think Norfolk will be low on the assessment side. So that annual income will come back to us. So that leads into, Chris, if we can go on to that next step slide. So again, we're asking for $14 million in total, $12.2 million at the last town meeting. So we have one of 2 options that we're talking about, and this is something that the Selectman will talk about a little bit at our meeting next week, and we'll continue to talk about as we learn more and more about some of the components of this. But what we're asking for is to exclude the debt up to $14 million from this project. So that would be an impact to the tax rate. But so one option is to exclude all $14 million, and then which is made up of the 2 town meeting votes. The other option, which I think we're really leaning towards, is to just exclude $12.2 million, and then the additional $1.8 million we would pay for from the general fund. And the 2 sources that would fund that would be, we've got some money coming back from the School Building Authority, and we're just closing that project finally now. This is for the Freeman Kennedy School. And we think that'll be in the ballpark of $1 million. And then the other $800,000 we believe we can pay for out of the rent from the Metacommon, or the Regional Dispatch Center. So we're going to show you some impacts on the tax rate, and you'll see 2 different options. The first page we'll show you is today.
Yeah, and just as a quick aside on this, Jack, it always comes down to money, you know, and folks are always concerned about what it's going to cost, as rightfully they should be. This slide shows what is currently on the excluded debt side of the equation. This is debt that is over and above the operational considerations of the town. It's added onto the tax base after the tax base is set. We have basically 4 items that are on there. Not basically, we have 4 items on there. We have the library, which expires in 2023. And then we have the junior high and the senior high. And of course, we have the new Freeman Kennedy School. And you can see on the right side the number that actually applies to the current tax rate. It's $1.59 on top of the tax rate. So another way of saying it is if we didn't have this debt, our tax rate would be $1.59 lower.
Right.
Another way to say it, if you will. I think most of you know now, if not, you will if you watch this show, that the new tax rate is set at $18.08. That is an increase, partly due to the Freeman Kennedy School. But one of the things that folks, it's difficult to explain to people is that the tax rate is very much a function of the value of the property versus the budget. I mean, it's really a simple formula. Property has started to increase in value, appreciate in value, but we're always a year behind in that calculation. The state requires such. And I believe the calculation this year only went up 2.5%, 3%. We expected more because home sales have grown at a faster rate than that. We know that the following year, or last year's sales, if you will, indicate that the growth rate for next year's tax rate is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6%. So the numbers that we're going to show you today are the worst case scenario. We anticipate that the final numbers, because we won't go to funding until about 2018, we anticipate that the final numbers will probably be more favorable than what we're going to talk about today. But in fairness, we want to show you the worst case scenario. So if you can go to the next slide. This is a debt exclusion of $14 million. This is, as I say, the top of the line, if you will. We think it will be less than this. We're very much inclined towards the 12.2. And I might add that we're still refining the buildings, too. We're still looking at ways to cut some of the costs down. So 12.2 might be a little on the high side by the time we're done as well. But this is the worst case scenario. One change on this slide that you might notice where there's a star next to King Philip. King Philip recently refinanced its debt at the 10-year mark. And they reduced, basically because of interest rates, they reduced the amount of our payment. That reduction was in the amount of about $88,000 per year. So that is very favorable towards the tax rate for us. We actually saved 10 cents on the dollar there for the tax rate. So that's good news. They couldn't do it any sooner, which is a question, quite frankly, I asked. And it was because of the municipal bonds that they were involved in. They had to do it at the 10-year mark. So they took advantage of it at the earliest possible time, and the interest rates played well for them. But this, if we were to go for a $14 million exclusion, the bottom line would be it would add total, our excluded debt would be $2.20 on the tax rate, of which 70 cents would be the public safety building. Some of you that may have seen the warrant might have noticed that the advisory board indicated that it would be $26. We corrected that at town meeting, but I did want to take the opportunity to explain how that happened. When we were meeting with the advisory board, we were looking at a number of different options, and I'm the one that mentioned $26 per 100, but I was referencing what it would cost. We estimated the cost would be to redo the fire station. Unbeknownst to us, somehow that number gravitated over into their final report. We didn't see the final report before it went out. It's just an unfortunate mistake, but I'll certainly take the responsibility for that because the number came from me, although I was talking specifically about the fire station at the time, which is about what it would have been, by the way, if we'd only done the fire station, the renovations. So anyway, the impact is 70 cents, worst case scenario, if we were to go to a $14 million exclusion. But let's take a look at the alternative that we think is more realistic. If we were to go for the $12.2 million, that 70 cents is reduced to 61 cents, 9 cent reduction. The overall change, which is the bottom number, if you can put that slide up, Chris, the overall change, go one more if you would. There we go, thank you. The overall change to the tax rate at that point in time, net differential, would be 52 cents. So in essence, that's what it's going to cost us, we think realistically today, for every $52 is another way to say it, $52 for every 100,000 of evaluation of the property. The additional variable in there that we can't forecast at this point in time is obviously the growth that we have in town in terms of the value of our property. If it does go up 4 or 5 or 6%, then the differential will go down. But at this time, this is what we think it will be. We think that's a real number. We don't think, we know that's a real number. And that's what the financial impact will be to the taxpayer. So if you have a $500,000 home, or a $1 million home, or whatever it might be, multiply every 100,000 times 52 cents, and you'll have the tax impact. And that's the first year. It goes down every year thereafter.
Yeah, it's interesting that overall total property value, sometimes we call it, because the state calls it the EQ value or the equalization value. So the total value of all of our taxable property in town is $1,590,000,000. Wow, $1,590,992,453. That is still, even though we've had $240 million of new growth over the past 7 years, that is still just getting back to the number that we had for total property value in 2007.
Actually, it's still below it.
Yeah,
just a little bit below it.
So we're hoping, that we're not looking for inflation or anything, but we're hoping that appreciation will return those values to where they were, or at least keep heading in that direction.
Yeah, the assessor's office does projections based on the sales. They know the sales from the prior year, and they're optimistic, I guess is a good way to say it, that the assessments, the value of the property will be up closer to 5%, as opposed to the 2% we're experiencing this year. But that said, we want to share with you what we believe to be the case today. We hope it'll be a little bit better when the time comes in 2018, but those are the numbers as of today with today's values.
So it's about, another way we've said it a couple different ways, and just to say it one other way, for a $500,000 home, it's about $260 per year. Obviously, and that's a taxable. There's a taxable benefit to that as well. So, you could look at the tax benefit of that. But as far as paying your tax bill, it's about $260 on a $500,000 home would be the $12.2 million debt exclusion that we're looking for.
I would encourage people to, if you have not gone to the public safety facilities, to do so. Pass your own judgment as to what the needs are. I think most people that have done that recognize the need. The building, I believe, was 1950s construction. We're going to basically do as little as needed, if you will, to make the public safety building down at the Main Street serviceable for the fire department, basically putting in new garage space and things of that nature, because the trucks are bigger than they were in the 1950s. I did want to mention, it has really nothing to do with the public safety building financially, but we were able to secure a grant for a brand new ambulance, and we have check in hand.
Yep.
We want to thank the state for that. The voters, had approved our opportunity to borrow money to buy that new ambulance because we're in need, and now we don't have to spend it. I believe it was about $259,000.
Precisely.
We thank the state for that.
Yeah, that was obviously a great help. We're happy for that assistance, and like we said, we will have a warrant article in the spring to rescind that authorization, because we want to take that off of our books as a liability.
We haven't borrowed it, just so you know, but you had authorized us to do that, and we will not be going forward with that now. So.
Yeah, if I don't want to beat this to go down the path too far, but just some of the, as you said, you go down to. I encourage people to go down to the public safety building. Just some of the challenges that they face today with the firefighters. That station was built, like you said, in the 50s.
With a volunteer fire department.
Yeah, with the volunteer fire department. So we had, we may not even have had one full-time employee.
Yep.
Yeah, we had a chief, and so now that the firefighters are, particularly in the night when they're waiting for calls, they're out in that trailer in the back. So they're crossing across the parking lot back into the building to respond. Their equipment is in a different place. There's no good place for their storage of the EMS equipment or the drugs, if you will. It's just the building was not designed for the operation that we have today on the fire side, and equally on the police side, it was a much smaller department. I don't know the number it was back in 1950, but it wasn't 18. It's probably more like 10. We don't have locker rooms for the guys, let alone the female officers we have, which we have at least 4 I can think of now, 2 full-time and a couple of reserves.
Cars, they have to be maintained outside. They have to keep running during the wintertime because we don't have you can't go out in the middle of winter in a heavy frost and a snowstorm and start your car when you've got an emergency. So you have to keep them running. This new facility will have the ability to bring the majority of the cars inside, which is a major consideration.
Yeah.
Every town is facing this. Medfield has just approved a brand new public safety facility. Millis has just approved a brand new public safety facility. Mansfield, it's just, unfortunately, it's one of those things that communities have to invest in. I think we all agree that our public safety folks do a wonderful job, and they've been living in conditions, working in conditions that just are not very desirable. Roll call for the police, by the way, is held in the hall. Yeah. There's no room to do that. There's no facility to do that. So they've made the best of what they have, and we give them great credit for that. But it's an overdue project. Obviously, we hope it'll be supported, but we also understand the financial impact to the taxpayers. And that really is the main purpose of this show, is to share all the financials. That's the picture. We hope that you will all weigh it, and we hope you'll all vote. That's the most important thing. Whatever your view, vote. That's what's important. I mentioned, I'll repeat again, we're going to be holding an open forum on January 7th at the library. We'll go through all this again and answer any questions you'll have. We may have the project a little bit more refined at that point, but again, this is the worst case scenario. We also intend to do a mailing, if not at least a postcard, if not more, but we'd like to get financial information into every household in the town, just merely to say that we want people to be informed. So we're doing all we can do, and we'll hope for a good day in January 19th, I believe, is the day of the election.
January 19th, the day after Martin Luther King Day.
We're going to make sure it's a good day. We're putting the request in now.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we picked that day too was because it's the kids won't be in school. It's a teacher prep day, so it's. And you mentioned those towns, also Rentham and Foxborough have new public safety buildings.
Yes.
I'd encourage people to go over and look at the Medfield construction site. I've seen pictures of it. I haven't seen the actual site, but
I drove by it the other day. It's a big project.
It's an $18 million building.
$18 million building. Yep.
And that doesn't include all the relocation costs that they have going on. Their fire department is down at the DPW, and the police is in some commercial building somewhere over on West Street, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's it for that topic.
Hopefully.
One other topic I wanted to talk about briefly was we had Officer Palladini, Michelle Palladini, and Officer Farrah Gray hosted a public session at the library to talk about the heroin crisis in Massachusetts, and I was able to attend. You were able to attend as well, and it was well attended by the public. I was happy to say there was 12 to 20 people there. A lot of people opened up and shared their problems that they've had with their family issues. Unfortunately, I think we can all share some type of a story about this. And as we know, reading in the Globe, Charlie Baker, Governor Baker, I should say, has opened up about this and talked about it, and he's made it a top priority. So I just want to thank Officer Palladini and Officer Gray for hosting that session. I thought they did a great job, and they want to have more. I encourage you to look at the police department's Facebook page or their website and look for future events, because they will hold more for the same topic as well as other topics as well.
Yeah, it was alarming to me to learn how much of a problem this is really becoming. It's one of those sort of out of sight, out of mind issues that every community is wrestling with. But we had, I think, 13 or 14 incidents last year, and we've had that many incidents already this year. And unfortunately, we've had one tragic death. You're as a result of it. Yeah,
you're just talking about the use of the Narcan to resuscitate somebody.
So it's here, and it's all over. It's at every age, and we've done such a great job with Officer Plimpton has done such a great job with the DARE program. He's an institution. And I know my daughters that are back in town with their children. they went through that with, and you know, they always give him the same signals they always did when they were in school. So he is an institution, and Michelle is doing a wonderful job up at the middle school.
Yep.
So our public safety people, our police are doing everything they can to communicate the risks associated with this, to make people aware. They're doing all they can. So we're grateful for their efforts.
You know, it's funny, I was thinking about Officer Plimpton, OP.
OP, yeah.
And now Michelle Palladini at the school. We can't call her OP too, but we'll have to think of, somebody's going to have to come up with a creative name for her.
Yeah.
But she's been great. The other thing I wanted to just talk about was the selectmen have opened up the public comment period for the transfer station rates and the water rates. So if you have concerns or comments or suggestions for improvement on the transfer station or the water department, we encourage you to send those in to the DPW. There's a if you go to the DPW's website, there's a link there for you to send those comments, and it'll go directly to them. Or just call my office, and we'll take those down. I'll handwrite them. So we encourage you to send those in. But we've been able to maintain the rates for a number of years now,
And hopefully continue
hope
to maintain the rates
continue
for
to go down that
future
path.
years. We are in need of new water sources in town. I know we've talked about it before. We're actively looking for those sources. Wells cost anywhere between $1.5 to $3 million, depending on the level of treatment that the water requires. But we're very actively engaged in that process. Another variable is whether we find the source on property we own or property we have to purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on with that. We're doing test wells as we speak. So we're actively engaged. We do have reserves to begin to pay for this, so it isn't going to fall all on the backs of the water takers. We've got about $1 million, over $1 million in reserves in the water department. We had a good year. Our department's continually to do it under Jack's leadership directly. We've had really wonderful results in terms of the departments managing their budgets. And we had over $1 million of free cash certified in October of this year. We had to use some of that to clean up the old snow and ice deficit. Mm-hmm. And a few other items that always seem to pop up every year. But we'll be going into town meeting with close to about $600,000 of free cash. There are a lot of different ways that we might consider, what we might consider to do with that. One thing we don't want to do is add it into operational costs that only make the deficit the following year that much harder to fill. So we'll look at maybe one-time funding situations, or perhaps put more into the stabilization fund, which we've been able to do twice now in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Or roads. You know, there's a continuing need for
Big
roads.
need for roads.
We're going to talk that through and would welcome input.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining me again.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
this is,
Thanks. Sorry my voice is a little...
Yeah, I hope you, I know you got your tea going there, so I hope that provides some relief for you. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, or celebrate the season that you celebrate.
Most importantly, enjoy your family and have a safe holiday.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thanks to Christopher in the control room. And NCTV does a great job for the town. I appreciate everything they do. So thank you, folks. And have a Merry Christmas, Jim.
Merry Christmas, Jack.